Hey Rob, what's happening? Listen mate, I'm busy recording a YouTube video. No, right now the camera's on, the microphone's on. No, they can't hear you, no. Listen, I got a little problem. Like, I'm recording this YouTube video and I'm 90% sure, like I'm onto a thing here. Like, I know where the problem is, but there's a few of the words, I don't know what the right word is. I'm just worried I'm gonna explain this problem, which I'm 90% sure is correct. It's just I used the wrong word because I don't understand the data warehousing part and the Microsoft Amazon account part. Obviously I've never done that. So I'm just concerned that I'm gonna record this video and it'll be sort of right, but I'll use the wrong word and then it's not right. And then the whole thing's like ruined. Yep. No, I'm gonna record our team session and I'm gonna insert that into the YouTube video. No, I don't want to do it like that. I don't want to tell you the story and then stop and then put the cameras on and then do it again twice. I just want to do it once. So like, I'll just present the video to you and you just correct me where I make any mistakes with the wording of things. Because obviously this piece of the puzzle is not my area of expertise. No, you'll be fine, mate. Just brush your teeth and put a clean shirt on. You'll be fine, mate. Don't worry about it. What's your availability like? Can we do it now? A couple of hours? All right, I'll send you a Teams invite and we will all see you soon. Cool, bro. Bye. Thanks, buddy. So, I'm gonna take a 2-hour break, get some work done, and you and I will join Rob and we'll work through this thing. And hopefully this will work out. How are you? Good yourself?
Fantastic.
The reason why I wanted to create this video originally and have this discussion was because I sort of, like Australia, it's like a time machine. You got to go back in time, you come to Australia, right? Because I think, we've been on this technology thing and, energy efficiency ratings stuff, building energy efficiency ratings and control strategy optimization, all this stuff in technology. I'm pretty sure we're like 10 years ahead of everybody else. And we've made a few stuff ups along the way, just like going through a learning curve. And there's a lot of other countries in the world that are probably starting their whole technology journey. And I'm just thinking, we should talk about this because they could sort of learn from some of the mistakes that we made. For a long time now, I remember when I did my very first ever, technology project, I wrote a specification, went out to tender, 5 companies, did a tender interviews, presentations. And one of the questions on my list was always, who owns the data? And I used to always try to impress my customer. Look at me, customer, I'm asking them a tricky question. Who owns the data? But every single time the answer was, don't worry about it, Bryce, the customer owns the data. If you cancel our contract after a year or 2 or 3 years, we'll give you back your data. We'll give you back, those 15-minute trend samples of all the electric meters. You'll get a bunch of spreadsheets, temperature trends, pressure, valves. We'll give you everything back. You own the data. And that was great. So that was never ever an issue. But in recent times, I've sort of been thinking about that might sort of be like a secondary question. And the primary question nowadays is not so much who owns the data, but who owns the data warehouse, the data structure. This is the part where I'm a bit unsure. So let me tell you what I think it is, and then you can sort of correct me on this one. So in my opinion, what I'm thinking is happening is we pay the technology company money to set the whole thing up. So install a gateway on site, to do a big integration. It's a lot of work. The database from the BMS is a bit of a mess. Sometimes it's AHU_1, sometimes it's AHU-1. Could be, the names are all different, right? So this technology company spends a lot of time cleaning up this database, that all the naming conventions for the objects are correct and make sense. And then they would probably go and tag all those points. So on this electric meter, they put some tags on there called kilowatt hour, meter, level 10, tenant, lighting, and they tag up all these points. Temperature sensors, valve actuators, they tag the whole database, and then when all this engineering pre-work is done, it's really easy for them to run their applications, their machine learning stuff. They can pull data really quickly. They can create a rule like in half an hour. The BMS would take 8 hours to manually create all this stuff, right? So they do all that, and that's fantastic, right? But here is like the issue, the part of the discussion is, right, if after 5 years, the owner decides like this was a great journey, we made lots of savings, it was a complete success with this technology company, but there's a new shiny ChatGPT thing that's out there and they want to have a go at that, right? So they close the account with technology company A and they create an account with technology company B and you get all your data. But here's the thing, that I think the technology company A, originally when they were engaged, they set up their own account with Microsoft or Amazon for the virtual machine in the data center somewhere where they create their database. And that account between Microsoft is with the technology company, not with the owner. So I'm thinking that when you close the contract, you get your data, the spreadsheets, but all that engineering, like cleaning up the names and tagging everything, all that stuff is gone, and company B has to start all over again. So what I'm trying to understand is this tagging, where does that live? And the database, where is that? Can I just like get that back from Microsoft or?
Well, not necessarily. I think when you ask that question around who owns the data, and then if that has to ever be called on, like you say, you're going to get a CSV dump of all of this 15-minute interval data that may not be useful to anyone, right? Because the part that is really useful and why deployments take so long is the model. And when I say model, I'm really talking about relationships between different points and pieces of equipment and interrelationships, I guess, between pieces of equipment. So you're not necessarily going to get that data model back.
That model thing, does that not exist in Microsoft? Don't I get all that tagging given to me? Like if the technology company agrees to transfer ownership from the Microsoft database to the customer, don't we get all that like that?
No, typically that would be within their application. So they're creating that time series database with the with the cleaning up of the naming that you may get if you ask for your data back, but the relationships and the tagging between those the points and the piece of equipment would typically reside within the application itself.
So are you saying that when the technology company creates their account with Microsoft and they've got this virtual machine thing, whatever it is, and they then install on that virtual environment their own, let's call it proprietary application. It's their tool, it's their platform that they use to do lots of engineering stuff. Like I don't care about all their rules and things, but they're also using their application to do the tagging, I guess, and maybe some of the database cleanup, not too sure, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So you probably need to separate the database or the time series database from the application, and that's where it gets tricky.
Yeah, but either way, like if I've got like, let's say it's $20,000 to do the engineering, which I think is a fair price, right? For like a 30-story commercial office, it might even be more than that. And if you've got 100 buildings, like that's $2 million, right? So it's still a stuff up. If it's one building, it's annoying, I guess. Still a waste of money, but annoying. But if you've got 100 buildings, you're committed. So it seems to me like if you have 100 buildings in your portfolio and you went with this technology company A to start off with, like that completely accidental lock-in has actually happened by accident, right?
But it happened because this structure does not exist within the BMS itself. So if it could shift that model or the tagging to the BMS, then all of a sudden we're not in this situation.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean that when a technology provider deploys on a site with this gateway you spoke of, they're just pulling out backnet points typically, right? Like, yeah. Hopefully they're named. In some cases, they're not. Analog output 1, digital output 2, whatever it may be.
So, hundreds of analog output 1, hundreds of thousands, hundreds and thousands. Yeah. Yep.
So then the process actually is, in some cases, that technology provider has to log into the BMS and find controller 1, digital output 1. Oh, that's the fan start stop. And then they name it or tag it or start building this model outside of the BMS. So that's why
as like I've seen situations before where we give the technology company a full points list and a network drawing. So listen, go for your laugh, build this thing, and they come back, listen, Bryce, there's like, we've found 50 controllers. We've scanned and found, and they're not on the they're not on the points list anywhere. They're on the network drawing. So there's no doubt about it that for a technology company to clean up a BMS database that was never ever created with the intention of being like made available to the cloud is a massive piece of work and a headache. So are we saying that if we, in the BMS, we cleaned up the database in the BMS database. So we said to BMS, come listen here, like here's a naming convention for all the points, the same format. And then is it possible to do the tagging in the BMS? I know like Niagara, there are some platforms that can do tagging, right?
Yes, that's right.
So if we clean the database up in the BMS and we tag it, then the owner can chop and change technology companies more easily or cheaper.
Yes.
Like that's actually a good solution because the customer owns the BMS application. The customer owns everything. So that will also sort of shut down some of the subscription service costs. Because I guess the technology company is charging you a subscription service for the Microsoft hosting as well as their own fees and their own managed service. So
the deployment costs are a massive barrier, right? Like, to do it properly, it takes a lot of time. And the other advantage with it being within the BMS is that the engineer who's deploying that BMS,
I'm going to get my haircut, bro.
the BMS engineer who's deploying, he's closest to the equipment. Like, he knows those relationships. A technology provider coming in that's not familiar with the site, like, assumptions have to be made when we're doing the tagging or the relationship. So it makes a lot of sense for it to reside within the BMS for many reasons.
All right, listen, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much, because I think actually at the end of this, I was on the right path, right? You can't just get the Microsoft database given back to you and you're done with it. It actually, there's other piece of the puzzle that doesn't exist in the Microsoft piece or the Amazon piece that exists in the technology company's application. So, but it was good to sort of talk that through and try and connect some of the dots to fill in some of the gaps I had. And I think what we need to do is think more about this, because I think a lot of companies are not going to like the idea about having the database all complete in the BMS, right? There might be other things, right? But it's a good thing for us to sort of, the industry to talk forward, like, you know.
Yeah,
all right, thanks, buddy. Enjoy your Friday, and I will catch you. Like and subscribe, right? Bye. Bye. Well, that was a good exercise. I'm really glad that I took the time to give Rob a call and just run through that, because there were a few things I was just unsure about, and I don't want to mess that whole thing up. I really like the idea that he spoke about, this idea that, you know, the technology company, they have no access to the BMS database. You know, technology company cannot log into BMS and clean up and tag the database within the BMS, within the physical service on site. They have a service to provide, you know, analytics, visualization, all their dashboards and things, machine learning stuff. And to provide that service to building owners, they had to recreate the entire database. They had no other option. So they've created this database and it's hosted in the cloud somewhere. And, you know, this potential lock-in, if it happens, was, you know, without a doubt, by accident. I think that in Australia for the last 10 years, we had to go down this path on this journey to get the point now where I would guess that there are portfolio owners out there that have 100 buildings or 200 buildings, and they've signed up a technology company, and all that database structure is sort of proprietary. If they close that contract, they're going to start again. So what I want to do here, I think if you're a building owner, I think you should. And if you're interviewing a technology company and they're showing you their dashboards and their workflow management tool and explain their managed service, and you're having that presentation with them, you're getting excited about it, just stop for a moment and ask them two questions. The first question is a warm-up question. You ask them, who owns the data? You know, can I have those 15-minute samples back of all the data? 10-minute samples, 5-minute samples, whatever it is. Can I get that back? They're always going to say, yes, you can get that back. That's their warm-up question. The second question, more importantly, is what happens if we cancel our contract with you? What happens to all that valuable engineering that you did for a few months when you cleaned up the database and you tagged all those points? What happens with that? Understand that, because in most cases, I think you're going to find out that you have to do it again. So understand that. It's super important to understand that. Now, at the end of that discussion, you know, Rob was proposing this idea that, well, why don't you just clean up the BMS database and do all the tagging in the BMS servers? And I said there, like, to me, that sounds like a great idea, because the customer owns the BMS server hardware. The customer owns the BMS application, graphics, alarms, trains, and reports. The BMS, the owner owns the database. The owner owns everything. So it's a good idea. I don't want you to take that idea as something that you should do. Just, it's a bit of food for thought. I don't know if it's the best idea. I haven't sat down and crunched through that and worked out, is that the best idea? Because there would be problems with that too. There's no doubt about it. You know, I'm just thinking now, if you've got 30 buildings, you could have 10 BMS companies or 10 different BMS systems across those 30 buildings. For you to now go to 10 different BMS providers, 10 different BMS companies with different business models and different pricing and different capabilities, and ask them, all 10 of them, please restructure all 30 buildings. That would be not something you want to start. Yeah, that would be a problem. This is probably better for when you're starting fresh, you're doing a BMS upgrade or a new construction project. But what I'm saying here is, that's just food for thought. I'm not saying, and I don't think Rob's probably saying, that that is the best answer for all situations. That was just good to talk through, to understand alternative options. but you should do your own homework and understand. I also think that different technology companies would do things differently. Some might be better, some might work better for you. So see down in the YouTube description box below for some details of how to connect with Rob. Follow him on LinkedIn. He's a good guy. I think Rob's a bit like me. He's half a consultant and half a contractor, sort of together. Like, he's quite hands-on. A lot of consultants, they can run specifications and provide a lot of value to you, but they may not know how to exactly do the job themselves. So that's where, Rob could be useful to you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.